Yo, what's up guys? I got no game development experience whatsoever, but I want to bring Fortnite 2 to the PSP, so hit me up, make my game for me, and let's get it going. During the PSP's life cycle, the homebrew community surrounding it was exploding, and I could spend all day talking about the different mods, applications, emulators that came to this thing, but today we're talking about something I'm very nostalgic about, the Quake mods. Quake is an old arena-style first-person shooter that released back in 1996, kind of like the spiritual successor to Doom, a fully 3D game, which was very graphically impressive for its time, and also had a fairly scalable engine that was easy to mod. Fast forward to over a decade later, and that's where it comes into play on the PSP, because it got a PSP port, and then all the other Quake mods followed suit. You see, if you could think of a game, especially a first-person shooter, it was probably a Quake mod on the PSP. Halo on the PSP? Call of Duty on the PSP? Let's just reskin Quake. Or more accurately, let's reskin Kurok. You see, we can't talk about any of these other Quake mods before first discussing Kurok on the PSP. Kurok was a game developed by David Amari, which was a first-person shooter based on the original GoldenEye 64 and Kurok. Or Turok, as the name suggests. If GoldenEye 64 and Turok had a baby, it would be this game. Like, exactly. Taking heavy inspiration from both of these games, he made something very original from the ground up on the PSP platform, catering the entire experience to this. When you play this game, if I hadn't told you any different and you didn't know, you'd probably have no idea you were playing a game running on the same engine as Quake. He made most of the assets from the ground up. He reworked the coding and the physics in the game to play like something a little more traditional in a sense. So instead of that fast, weightless movement of Quake, you had something that was a little more grounded. This game is way better than it probably has any right being, especially on the PSP, a very limited system. He crunched this thing down to just like a 50 megabyte game, and it's awesome. He even included a multiplayer mode with original maps, including community-driven maps, and overall, it's just a fun game. And to end on that note, I'm going to end it with his own commentary.
That's Kurok on the PSP. If you still have a PSP, please get it. Please play it. Please enjoy it. I put my heart and soul into it, and yeah, I'm proud of it.
So with the release of such a premium quality experience like Kurok, it inspired a lot of other people to follow suit, especially considering they wanted these AAA experiences on a portable platform, because this thing was kind of like a portable PS3 without the power. So how do you get something like Halo running on a PSP, something that has like 32 megabytes of RAM? Well, you take some models and you reskin Quake. I'm even guilty of trying to start up one of these games myself, because at the time the barrier of entry was really low. All you had to do was have some semblance of a box art design, maybe a couple of custom maps, or a custom player model that you just slapped in and replaced everything else in the game with. Yeah, I wonder why that didn't work out. But for every Call of Quake or Quake Assault that was in development for the PSP, there were a few shining examples of a few games that really made it a lot further in development, and today I think it's going to be worth taking a look at a few of those, so that's what we're going to be doing. First one we're taking a look at is NZP, or Nazi Zombies Portable. Mitch, aka Blood IV at the time, wanted to create a game based on Nazi zombies and bring it over to the PSP with the power of the Quake engine. Hey guys, I really want Call of Duty Zombies on the PSP. Just go ahead and join my team and we can make it happen, and it can look like Call of Duty Zombies on the PSP. That's what I imagine he would have sounded like at the time. I was actually a mapper on this team, never really created anything substantial for it, but I tried my hand at it, really wasn't for me. But this one actually did come pretty far into development. You got a few playable maps here, including a Christmas special, which was funny because around Christmas time they like put Santa hats on all the zombies. But if we just go into the classic one here, this one's gonna look familiar to you guys. One thing that was really impressive about NZP was the loading screens. If Call of Duty Zombies was being developed for the PSP by the real team, this is probably what the loading screens would have looked like. I mean, the design is very simple. You have like a small hand-drawn map with a few vague objects laying around that kind of look like they represent what the map is about, but it was executed very well. And there's a lot of impressive things here about NZP. Almost all of the gameplay elements of Call of Duty Zombies were made from the ground up and then put into this game. You can aim down sights with your gun, you can buy guns off of the wall, you can unlock doors, and yes, there's a mystery box. Granted, there's not really a whole lot of bullet spread, at least in the alpha gameplay, so you don't really need to aim down sights, but the fact that that was put into a game like Quake is really impressive. Going back to it and actually going back to all of these games, what I didn't realize is just how freaking buggy they are. But I mean, you have everything in here, like every gun from Call of Duty Zombies. You have all of the pickup perks like insta-kill and max ammo. That's all here and it's all functional. You can rebuild barriers on the walls and you can just keep progressing through the rounds as you would in the real game. Like, this is just almost fully realized bite-sized version of Call of Duty Zombies on the go, on the PSP. A game running on something with 32 megabytes of RAM. I mean, you really have to understand the limitations of not only the PSP, but the game engine this is being made on. This is trying to copy a fairly modern game and run it on an engine from 1996 on a PSP with almost no power behind it. Oh yeah, it has one analog stick. So the way you control most of these games is you'll use the analog stick to look around and the face buttons to move, the triangle, X, square, circle, or that format will be reversed and you'll do the opposite on each end. That obviously doesn't leave you a lot of buttons. There's not two shoulder buttons or a shoulder button and a trigger on each side. You only have one shoulder button for each side. So you were very limited with your control too. So you had to kind of pick and choose where you would implement things and how you would implement them. So yeah, NZP, it's very buggy, but it is playable and surprisingly feature complete.
What the fuck? I'm not even supposed to be here.
A game that you're all probably very familiar with, whether you've actually even played it or not, is Halo. And yes, there was Halo for the PSP in the form of a couple of different forms actually. See, talking about Halo on the PSP actually gets a little tricky because there were quite a few different variations. You had one developer that went by JoeMart2000 who officially released these different builds of his Halo PSP. However, they were usually just like one certain weapon type with one map. You would never have like one feature complete experience. There would just be like a million different experiences you could download and pick and choose from. These were all very rough, very buggy, but the impressive thing about him is that it seemed like he ported the actual assets from Halo into Quake. So when you were playing on a JoeMart2000 Halo map, you were actually playing on a real Halo map that was ported over to the PSP version. Well, the PSP Quake version. But the real heavy hitter was Halo Solitude. This was being developed by a team that went by Flaming Ice. And this was probably one of the more professional development teams outside of ones like Zombies Portable. Halo Solitude kept everything really tight-knit under lock and key. They posted frequent development updates, but they never officially released the game for the PSP. However, towards the very end of the team's development lifecycle, they released an alpha version for the PC. I do remember that, but I can't find a download link for it anywhere. In fact, I can't find a download for Halo Solitude period anywhere. A lot of these mods are becoming very hard to find because they were hosted on sites like Mega Upload back in 2008, which don't even exist anymore, so a lot of the links are expired or just don't work. However, there were a lot of versions of Halo Solitude floating around in the form of leaked builds, you see. Their development files would get stolen, or maybe even developers themselves that were part of the team got sick of the game being delayed so much and just released it themselves. So you'd actually have builds of Halo Solitude that were fairly playable floating around in the wild, all varying in different quality obviously because the development process was ongoing and none of these were meant to be released. But the final and probably the most interesting Halo PSP build to talk about would definitely be Halo Revamped. This was a project being compiled by Mexicougar, aka TC Pixel, as you can find him on YouTube now. And this was basically the most feature-complete experience you could get for a Halo on the PSP. He took the best leaked build of Halo Solitude that he could find and compiled as many of the Halo Solitude maps that he could into this. He neatly organized maps and game modes. He included his own maps as well as community-made maps, some of them that were being made for like the Halo Solitude mapping competition at the time. So he took all the guns and some of the best content that he could and applied it to this build of the game, as well as doing some light coding of his own to improve the experience.
I went haywire, dude. I added everything. I was a Halo freak, dude. So I limited the grenades. I freaking coded the ability to switch between the grenades. I just started like figuring out all this programming and code and stuff. I didn't animate the switch weapons. They were already animated in the files. Flaming Ice had already animated them. They just never coded them. So
I wondered that.
I coded a way to be able to, it was no easy task. That switching animations freaking thing was such a pain in the butt. And that's the thing, is people don't understand how little that little feature is, but how accomplished I was when I actually added that into the code, and how cool it probably was for you and all the other people around.
I believe he even added a firefight mode at the time, which was really impressive. So now you have a fairly competent build of Halo Solitude on the PSP that you're able to play with bots. Very hard bots. And the bots as well were impressive. They could do things like shoot and throw grenades, which wasn't even in any of these leaked builds of Halo Solitude. This was something that TC Pixel actually coded in himself. He put in a lot of painstaking work to getting this right. He changed a lot of the HUD elements, and he overall made the best playable experience that he could for the time. You could throw grenades, plasma grenades. I mean, as far as the basic Halo experience, it's pretty much all here. You have some of the really good officially made Solitude maps like Sci-Fi Nux, who made Narrowed, which was like a bite-sized version of Narrows, was really good. I mean, you got all the weapons like the assault rifle, the sniper rifle, the shotgun, the needler, plasma pistol, and it all works as you would expect. This was definitely one of my favorite Quake Mod PSP games, and I really appreciate all of his hard work on it.
Maybe the helicopter. Maybe it's made of chocolate.
Moving on to some Valve content. You guys like Left 4 Dead? How about Left 4 Quake? So in the corner when you spawn, there's a sewer kind of similar to the sewer that's in the original game, leading up to the hospital, which you're doing in this level, so I'm assuming that's what it's based off of. They actually coded in a flashlight, which was unique to this game and pretty cool. And whoever coded in the shotgun did a really good job. The shotgun actually feels really good. It matches with the sounds of the original shotgun in Left 4 Dead, and it just honestly feels good to use when you shoot the zombies. They're a one-shot kill, and there's actually headshot dismemberment, which is an interesting thing. Another interesting thing is the pickups. All of the pickups in this game actually work, like the pills, the med kits, and they actually work like they would in Left 4 Dead. And I actually know that there was a functional pipe bomb as well. I can't find one in this map that I'm playing in this alpha, but I do remember they did have that coded in as well. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of variety. There's one zombie type, no special infected, one small map. And as you can imagine, who knows what the longevity of this creation would have been, considering the PSP could barely handle something like massive hordes of zombies, which is something the original game offered. Quake Engine doesn't really have something comparable to that. So would have been interesting to see how they worked that out.
And when you're dead, I will be still alive, still alive, still alive.
What about Portal? Well, on here, you get Quartal. Yeah, a lot of these games had a running theme where they would replace the first letter of the word with a Q for Quake. Pretty tongue-in-cheek. And the running theme with all of these games that you'll notice is they all have a similar menu layout. They all load the same way. Whenever you finish a level, you get the same finished objective screen that you get in Quake, as well as your name being kind of posted in the top left corner. I don't remember if that was a Quake thing or a Kurok thing, but a lot of these games were actually being built on top of Kurok. It just goes to show you what a solid foundation that game is. But like I said before, the Quake engine's very old, wasn't made for a lot of physics-based environments, and then we try to put Portal in here, which is a heavily physics-based game, which is kind of funny. What's weird is that in this first level, you can drop a cube down on the door, and if you don't make it fast enough, the cube will actually fall through the door. But if you do make it fast enough, the cube stays in place on the platform. But you may be surprised to know that there is actually a portal gun in this game, and it's fully functional, and yes, you can do the infinity portal thing, but after a few loops, it'll actually slow you down and kind of restart the speed. If memory serves me correct, I think somebody was working on a portal gun type of thing in Quake for a while, so maybe this code was based up on that, but it does technically work. Now, there's not a whole lot of depth to it, obviously. There was only like a couple of test levels, and eventually I got stuck and just kind of gave up. But it's kind of funny to see something like that emulated in Quake. All these games are very different in their play style, but yet they all are kind of emulated in the same similar fashion.
Let let you know you're a stupid fuck.
You want to get a little older than Left 4 Dead and Portal? How about Half-Life? Yeah, there was actually like the first training mission of Half-Life ported into Quake on the PSP, and it works exactly the same way when you're riding through the train in the intro sequence and it's playing out all these little animations and lighting effects and stuff. That all works exactly the same way. Not really sure how that was coded, because the engine is obviously a bit different. I don't remember if this is source or if this is pre-source, but Quake is basically like the old grandfather of the source engine. Like, I don't know the exact similarities, but some of the stuff is very similar. Like Worldcraft, the map editor you'd use for Quake, is very similar to Hammer, Source's map editor. Unfortunately, when we got to the end of the train sequence and I waited like this entire time for it to play out, the train like tipped upside down or something and dumped me out onto the floor, so I couldn't even continue on that sequence, and it wasn't worth it for me to try to play back that entire sequence again and do it. So yeah, that's all we're gonna look into for Half-Life. Plus, that's all they really had completed apparently. He said maybe in the future he would have finished the first chapter. Don't think the first chapter of Half-Life's being ported over to this thing now. And now I got a little bit of a cherry on top for you guys, a send away for this video. Another Valve classic, Counter-Strike. How could anybody forget Counter-Strike? Very simple PvP gameplay. Seems like it would be something that would be easy to emulate in something like Quake, right? Well, that is what one team of people, or one guy himself, did by porting over, seems to be Counter-Strike 1.6 maybe, into the PSP version. I'm not super familiar with the older versions. I know there's a few of them, but basically classic Counter-Strike on the PSP. And you can boot into a map here, and it, like, we're gonna boot into Dust 2, and you can see that it is in fact Dust 2, the real, like, legitimate map ported into Quake. However, the lighting is kind of broken. The brights are really bright, and you'll notice little visual elements that are a little bit off in any of these maps that are just straight ported over, because I think it was possible to just convert these into like Worldcraft maps or whatever the map format, BSP for Quake, but you would get a lot of visual errors. Compiling a map in general was just kind of a pain in the ass on Quake. From what I remember, there were very limited lighting situations that you could do, and the engine and both the map editor would have to be finely tuned to work together. But yeah, it seems like you got all the guns in here. From what I can see, they all work fairly snappy. Biggest limitation here is it seems that it's a 2v2 with the bots, and the frame rate tanks like a bitch. So if I want to play with bots and I want to have a competent or somewhat competent faster paced experience, I'd have to just do like a 1v3. And pathing seems a little bit weird on the bots, and a lot of these Quake mods, but especially this one. They will attack you, they will kill you, but it seems like they kind of get confused on where to go. Like, my teammates on T side are very confused, but then on Office, when I'm playing against the CT, it seems like they just kind of just straight bust through these hallways, but then on Dust 2, seems like they get a little hung up. So the bot situation varied a bit, and it was kind of weird, kind of dependent on the game you were playing. But the really interesting thing is that you can do things like take off the silencer and put on the silencer back on, and it actually changes the sound effect in game. Not sure if it changes how the game works, but that is something that legitimately changes. You can reload, you can scope in, and the movement is kind of slow, but it does kind of feel like Counter-Strike. Yeah, I'm not really sure why a game like this didn't really get out of its alpha stage. You would think they would have been able to come along a lot further. Maybe it was just the developer skill level, maybe it was just that the community wasn't sizable enough to warrant them putting that much effort into it, or maybe it was just the simple limitations of the PSP. I mean, like, you gotta think, yeah, the original Counter-Strike, not very demanding, but for a PSP, man, if you want to see how far we've came with technology in the past decade, just seriously, just go back to a PSP and it'll kind of blow your mind. Like, I didn't remember the screen having this much ghosting and being this low resolution, and the game's even running this bad. But man, we have came a long way in technology. Mobile phones have really just kind of blown these little portable consoles like this out of the water. Obviously, that's not always the case. The Nintendo Switch is wildly successful, but the PSP definitely was from a different time period to where we couldn't have massive games ported over to a portable platform, so this is the best we had to work with. I want to try to get some multiplayer with a friend on a few of these and see if we can actually make a playable experience. I think that'll be interesting, but I think that's about all I have to cover on it here. Also, PSPs in my area have been getting fairly expensive. I'm not sure if that's the case for you guys. I used to be able to pick these up all day in my local area for 40 to 60 bucks. Now they're always like 80 to 120. I was able to pick up these two off of Japan eBay for like 70 bucks for both of them. I did have to buy like a battery cover and a battery for one. So if you're looking for a PSP and you can't find one, I recommend checking out eBay, find some trusted sellers, and that's a good way you can go about it. But yeah, I think that's all I got to cover for the PSP Quake mods. I just have this really weird nostalgia for it, and I'd be interesting to know if any of you guys have that as well, because I know it's such a really weird niche thing. Probably not something that a ton of people did, but it was definitely something I was really into at the time, and I just look back on it so fondly, and I feel like it's so interesting to look at things like this, especially when we have things like the Nintendo Switch now, which take the place of this, that could actually run games like this. Let me know what you guys think, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Again, I apologize for the long pause in videos, but as you can see, we're in a new place and still getting used to the flow of things. There's Patreon if you want to support that. If you don't, it's all good, man. We're nearing 2.5K, which is a really big deal for me, so thank you guys for sticking around after subbing, and hopefully I'll see you guys in the next one. It's been C. Later. Gummies! I like gummies! I like gummies! Gummies. Came a little bit further in the but for every Quake Assault or Call of Quake that was in development for the PSP, there were a few shining of the What if you wanted the Call of Duty Zombies experience on the go? Well, what if you wanted the Call of